Broadcasting and advertising are like twin brothers or sisters, if I may say, and one can hardly do without the other. It's so simple as if the two must go together in order for the professions to really flourish and for human beings to get the benefit of it. And for a person to combine the two in himself, that surely will produce somebody who may rightly be referred to as a broadcaster par excellence, or if you like, at best, the doing of broadcaster. This is, by the way, my name is Yusuf Nadab Usman, and the program is Reflections. We are reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, the largest TV network in Africa. Today, we shall be talking about these two professions and how they melt down into the life of our personality, and look at them from his prism and try to get what we can get out of it, because we really want to solicit a lot more information from him. You're welcome once again. My personality this week is Dele Adetiba. Dele Adetiba is a veteran journalist and an advertisement expert who spent over 40 years talking to Nigerians and non-Nigerians on radio and television about sports and business. He is a foremost Nigerian sports commentator in the 70s and the 80s, who has carved for himself a niche in sports reporting and commentary. He started his professional journey in broadcasting as a sports analyst on Radio Nigeria and an announcer on NBC television. Within months, Dele Adetiba became the nation's main sport commentator, running live commentaries from various venues across the country. Mr. Adetiba later joined Lintus Limited, which is the oldest and the biggest advertising agency in Nigeria at that time, where he rose through the ranks to become its chief executive, designing communication ideas for clients within and outside the country. Mr. Adetiba is a fellow of the Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, and I was a member of its governing council for years. He has been a member of the Rotary Club of Lagos for 3.5 decades, a member of the Ikoyi Club for 4.5 decades, and its two-time chairman. Dele Adetiba is blessed with 4 children, one of whom is Kemi Adetiba, a foremost Nigerian movie actor and director. Dele Adetiba lives in Lagos, Nigeria. You're welcome to Reflections, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. When I was going through, trying to, search you in sources and platforms and the rest of them, I found myself, being pushed gradually towards a hot seat. And that's the seat I am now, not knowing exactly where to start from, talking about how heavy the portfolio is and where everything melted into you. But all the same, I should say, we can get started from the cradle. You started as a freelance journalist. Was there a push? Was there an inspiration? What really happened? How did you get started?
I had my first opportunity to be on air from school. Mm-hmm. The Radio Nigeria then, which was the main broadcasting outfit for the country, they had some program which they involved schools, secondary schools and things, now and again. The Women and Children Department of Radio Nigeria. And they came over to my school then to record not quite a play, not quite poetry, but something in between, in which we had to recite a few things, and I was nominated to be part of that cast, and so it fired my interest to a large extent. Of course, also the whole concept of broadcasting at the time was a very high-profile profession, which put you in the public eye. So many of the people who were in broadcasting at that time were people we looked up to. They were the nearest to what you might call the Hollywood stars
Okay.
of the days.
Right.
That was also notable growing up. And I found myself, as mentioned, as a freelance to start with in sports.
Okay.
I had always been interested in sports in school. I wasn't a great performer.
So maybe you were playing football or tennis or whatever?
Yeah, I played football in school. I played table tennis. I didn't even play lawn tennis then. But I was always very, very interested in sports.
Every journalist, every person in the media profession, after jumping into it, after getting the job, has an experience, and that's the first day in the media. And that, speaks volumes about who you are and how you'll be able to catch it, because for sure, as one of my editors once told me in 1992 when I joined it, he said that even if a professor comes here, he's going to do not more than what you've done as a graduate, because his knowledge is about the theory and you're here for the practice. So don't worry about this course we're giving you. Let's hear it from you. How was the first experience, the first report you wrote?
There is always something when particularly when you're having a live broadcast.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a recorded program which you could edit, which you could amend. But when you're having a live broadcast, and all our sports things were live, it put a certain urgency into you and a certain apprehension as well.
Yeah.
And you felt a need to excel, which brings in some anxiety. My first bit was 5-7 minutes contribution.
Okay.
Among lots of other people. So I wasn't left on my own to flounder for too long.
Right.
And I was able to get around that. I had another first when I moved to television, which is a different ball game.
Yeah.
And you experience that also differently. It helped that I had already been on radio before, but also going on TV for the first time also has its own nagging issues. You get a feeling 50 million people are looking at you now, even though you're in an empty studio.
Yeah.
So there are pressures. But I've always said, though, and I said to some of the young ones who are getting to the business, and even to my own daughter as well, there's nothing wrong with being nervous when you're performing. As a matter of fact, when you get too confident that it doesn't affect you anymore, then you better be careful.
Okay.
It's nice to have that little butterfly when you're performing. It puts you on check, makes you realize it's a serious business. Also knowing that once you get started, the butterflies fly away.
You remind me of of Larry King of the CNN. His first day on radio, because he yearned to be on radio for sure, and it's been going through. And he got the day, and he was asked to go and present a live program. And there he went. He set the tone, and the music was blaring, and he was dumbfounded. For quite a while, for about a minute, 2-3 minutes, he was not saying anything. Then the manager that gave him the job decided to come in and then find out what is happening. He said he banged the door with his leg and said, "This is communication business. It's a serious business." Then he banged it again and went out. Then from there, Larry King said he found his fate. And he picked up what the manager said, that this is communication business and it's a serious business, and he kept on talking. So these are always first times, and they are always with those butterflies, as you say. Now, when you look back on these issues and look at today, and then compare, then and now, I mean, do you like what you see, or do you like what you hear about journalists and their work?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
In some instances, I like what I see. in the sense that there are better opportunities now than then. The equipment a lot more sophisticated. You remember when you came in today and I said, "Oh, is that all the equipment you're bringing?"
Yeah.
If you were doing this in my time, some of the cameras would be bigger than you. You need a crane to bring it up the stairs.
Oh my God!
And I remember some of the playback machines in our time were as high as this.
Okay.
And the videotapes were this big.
Serious.
And of course, most of the programs were live. Something as complicated as, say, Village Headmaster was taken live.
Live?
Yes.
It was a drama.
It was drama.
Yeah.
Live. Most of the things came out live because the facilities to do many of the things were not quite there. So the equipment and the facilities are a lot different. They're improved. The bother I have with professionals now in the communication business, whether it's radio, television, or maybe even the press, is the attitude. The attitude is different, probably because the times were different. Many of the people who were operating when I was around were pioneers. I wasn't directly a pioneer, but I met pioneers, the very first set of Nigerians who were in broadcasting. I still met them in Broadcasting House. And you realize the kind of responsibility they had to be the first set of people to go on air and voice things. The training they had, they couldn't take it for granted like some of the young people do now. Before you went on for any program, a lot of preparation will go into it, because that's the way you were trained to do it. Yes, we'll come on and carry it on with a lot of heart and flash on camera, but behind the scenes, it was serious business. What I see these days is a lot of the young people here now see the flash, but not the preparation. And for instance, there was the talk in those days that newsreaders on BBC were obliged to wear suits.
BBC Radio?
Radio.
Right.
Were obliged to wear a formal suit. Nobody was seeing them.
Yeah, sure. That's why I said radio. They say he said yes.
Yeah. But it impacted on you what level of seriousness you bring into this. You could have come there with your slippers. Nobody would know.
Even with your pants, if you like.
Yes.
And then you read it. You go.
Absolutely. But the system was trying to impress it on everyone that you're doing a serious business. And in our time, reading the news was called grade A broadcast.
I think it is up to date.
It's still there now, right?
Yeah.
So it's something which you took very seriously. Things come very easy to some of the young people today that they really don't realize the importance and the gravity of what they do. You also have stories. Everything, of course, has been bastardized now with social media. That made things even worse. But by and large, the attitude was different.
Okay, now you said you belong to the second generation of broadcasters because you met the first. And then I associate myself, today there are so many that are still there and are still coming up and being churned out of the universities in order to join this profession. Associate myself, your generation was a transitional one. Even the fact that the first, the pioneer journalists or broadcasters were the ones that handed over to you, and you handed over to some of our elders, I must say. Now, that transition, how do you look at, the transition from those pioneers and what you handed over to those that took over you? Was it really a grand one that gave them the impetus to really take off from where you started or where you left?
From us to the next generation, right?
Yes.
Up until that time, yes, transition was it was standard.
Right.
Standard in the sense that you saw some of the biggest names in the country in broadcasting in actual operation. There was a guy, for instance, on radio in those days, was a producer, Adetiba. We hated recording for him.
And why?
To have a 15-minute recording, it could take you 2 hours.
Why 2 hours?
If you make one little slip, you are going back.
Start all over.
He never forgave any slip. And that was the attitude then. It has to be as near perfect as possible.
Right.
So you grew up with that kind of training. It becomes a part of you, and you would pass it on to the next person that you dealt with. The preparation also, you saw how the big guys in those days prepared. Never mind how big their names were in society. When they were in broadcasting house, it was grind.
Right.
So you saw the way they approached their work, and when you had the opportunity to be a part of their own program, whatever it is, you had a format to follow. So yes, the transition was standard, it was practical, and it was like mentoring.
Okay.
The other point I would like to make in that regard is the atmosphere around Broadcasting House in my time was very cordial.
Okay.
Some of these more senior people were very nice to us.
Okay.
I mean, we were little urchins where they were concerned, but they didn't rub it in. They took you in their wings, they chatted with you on the corridors, and you felt at home with them. Therefore, it was easier working with them and learning at their feet.
Oh, well, that's great, and that's really very interesting. We'll talk about sports because I'm very much interested in that. You didn't play football. I mean, you didn't play so much of sports, but you found yourself as a sports broadcaster of repute, I must say. We'll now take a break. We'll be back in a moment. In case you are just joining us, the program is Reflections, and I'm Yusuf Ladabusman. I'm talking with the doyen of broadcasting, I must say, a veteran journalist, Dele Adetiba. She'll be back in a moment for more. Stay with us. One thing that strikes everybody about you in sports is your commentary on sports, and of course your, the famous interview you conducted with Muhammad Ali, and then even there was one other, heavyweight champion too. I think if I can remember the name, but Muhammad Ali stands out.
You mean another world boxer?
Yeah.
Floyd Patterson.
Thank you very much, Floyd Patterson.
Yeah,
those are the two.
And Achimo as well.
Fine, that's good. But people are most, interested and stricken by the interview you had with Muhammad Ali. That was in the early 60s, I believe?
70.
70, sorry,
Yes.
early 70s.
I think it was actually 1970.
1970, right. That interview, How, in the first place, did you come by Muhammad Ali? Because he's only Nigerian, he's far away from the United States, and look at the years back, 70 then, and it feels like that when you look at the circumstance, one wonders how were you able to get him? Because I could know the pains I went through in trying to get you.
It was delivered on a platter for me.
Right.
It was soon after his fight, which was dubbed Fight of the Century in 1970 then, with Joe Frazier.
Right.
And that was the first time he was defeated in boxing. But the man was not broken.
Right.
After that fight, he went on a world tour, kind of.
Okay.
And Muhammad Ali was larger than sports. I mean, heads of states were queuing to receive him in their countries. And Nigeria was part of the itinerary.
Okay.
So he came over for about 3-4 days. And I think he also had an exhibition fight at the Oniko Stadium.
Okay.
And he had this assignment to have an interview on NBC television then. And I was the face of television sports at that point in time.
Right.
So not much of what I did, but I was lucky to be in place.
Well, naturally, you should be the person. So how did it go? Who did you see when you saw Muhammad Ali face to face, and it so happens you are going to talk to him directly? I mean, what struck you? What was it that you saw in your face then? I mean, in front of you while you were doing the interview?
First of all, I saw a big man. Ali was a heavyweight boxer.
From the stature, from the size?
From the size.
Right.
From the size. Being a heavyweight fighter already says it was big. Now, he didn't have the weight category of many of the earlier heavyweight champions who were like 240 pounds, 250 pounds and things. Maybe because he came from a light heavy.
Okay.
So his best fighting weight was like around 220.
Okay.
So he didn't look quite that big on television. But God help you if you were in the same ring with him.
Okay.
First of all, it was about 6'4", 5 or 6. I'm not sure now, but in that range. Very tall. But because he was very proportionally built, he didn't look big. He just looked fine.
Okay.
Chiseled. The first thing I realized, I met him outside of the TV house and brought him to the studio. And I strolled in. He had to bend down to enter the studio.
Okay, the door.
The door.
Right.
That struck me to start with.
Okay.
And then he sat down. And still talking about the size, I remember during the exhibition fight he had, can't even remember who it was with anyway. If he moved 2 steps sideways in the ring, he already covered the entire length of the ring.
Okay.
So I was able to now understand why many of his opponents had so much difficulty catching up with him and hitting him. He was so big that if he just moved 2 strides, he's moved well out of range. And 2 strides towards you, before you were ready, he was already on top of you.
Right.
So that struck me also for his size.
Okay.
But one other thing that I will always remember is how smart and intelligent he was.
Okay.
The general image of a fighter, which was a term Americans use, they hardly call them boxers, they call them fighters.
Right.
The general image of the fighter in America was of brawn, not brain.
Okay.
You know, dropouts.
Just the energy.
Just the energy.
Right.
But Ali was smart.
Right.
He could match you word for word on almost any subject. He was very quick on his feet thinking, and he had answers to suit whatever it is that you wanted. He could be diplomatic when he wanted to be. He could be as blunt as ever when he wanted to be. I remember, not with me, some interview he had, and somebody confronted him about his not accepting a draft to fight in Vietnam. And he said, I have no quarrel with the Vietnamese. Why should I go and fight them? In the Americas of that time, it was almost a treasonous thing to say.
Yeah.
But he was never afraid to say it. And I felt that sitting in front of him, that he was a courageous person, a smart person.
Was he humorous?
Yes.
See, because when one watches him fighting, there are statements he makes once in a while, maybe in order to make the opponent angry, in order to make the audience feel as if he's at home and things like that. I want to see, maybe was he like that in the studio, or was it just a ring thing?
No, it was very humorous. First of all, he was aware that he was a big name around the world, and therefore he tried to put you at ease if you were talking to him.
Okay.
But you're right, he was very humorous. I mean, I remember one statement, somebody asked him, how come you still have this very lovely, fine face? You don't have cuts like every other boxer and scars and things. And he said, oh, I have, only they're very small.
Okay.
You can't see them because only women come that close. Yeah, he was humorous.
And that's a good one, really.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Let's now shift gear a little and then look at some other aspects of broadcast live. We touched a little bit about newscasting in the earlier part of this interview, and then I would want you now to shed more light on this and then see how this is fit in today's journalism and broadcasting. During your days, that aspect of the BBC people having to put on be corporately dressed in order to cast news on radio was really a bit funny to me, because I couldn't just find the reason behind it. But all the same, you mentioned the reason. But today, right, what you say, I know you should have been watching local television stations and, of course, listening to radios and the rest of them. Do you like what you say from the newscasters of today as compared to your own time?
Well, as I said, I don't see that level of taking of responsibility to say what I say, how I say it, is as perfect as I can make it. Nobody is perfect, but as perfect as I can make it. I get the impression, I mean, even if you talk about the diction, many of the younger people now have more neutral diction than in my time. In my time, for instance, if a man came from Ekiti, you will know that he's an Ekiti man, even if he's speaking English. Or if he's a Benin man, you will know. Many of the younger people now have neutral accents. So you may not be able to tell easily
from where they come.
Some of that is rubbed up. But still, many of our people in those days who were in broadcasting were more correct in their pronunciations than what we have now. And it's not an accident. In our time, for instance, I mean, if you're reading the news or doing anything on radio or television, every word is checked out.
Checked out how?
How it should be pronounced. You can't run it through. We had a book, Daniel Jones.
Okay, yeah.
Pronunciation by Daniel Jones, with notations and things. It is never an excuse that I hadn't seen the word before. you would check it out and be certain. And by the way, that goes for also Nigerian names, which wouldn't be Daniel Jones,
Yeah,
but you
sure.
must find out.
You must find them
You
out.
know, you will not be allowed to get away with calling a Nigerian name badly. Whether you're a Yoruba man calling a Hausa name or a Hausa person calling an Igbo name, you must find out how to call the name.
Right.
So all part of the seriousness of the business and the responsibility that you took. And the bosses then took their responsibilities very seriously. So when you were performing, when you were reading, you were always very conscious that the big boys were watching.
Okay.
And they will get to you.
And once they get to you,
They
that will
will-
be good.
If this fellow didn't, the other, they will get to you.
Sure.
For sure. Sometimes, very rarely, they say, that was very good, which was reassuring.
Very rarely.
But you will hear from them if you call one word out of place. So it also put you on your guards. Beyond that, we also had a session every week.
Okay.
It used to be on a Thursday, in which all the people who voiced anything,
In the week.
news reading, commentaries, anything that, if you voiced anything, we all assembled in Studio A, in Radio House, from both TV and radio.
Okay.
And Dr. Christopher Collady was the Director General then. He would preside, and we had some of the old people, Sheikh Molushola from TV, Emmanuel Mashallah Radio, Sunday Young Harry, all the big boys were there. During the week, some performance will have been recorded without anybody knowing.
Okay. Any. It could be any.
It could be any.
Random.
So as you walked into the studio that day, you
It
had
could be
no
yours,
idea.
it could be his, it could be anybody's.
It could be you, it could be anybody else. And the good thing was, they also recorded the senior ones.
Okay.
So it wasn't just us, the little urchins, they also recorded the senior ones. And we all sit around and analyze, and they'll break it down. If it was rubbish performance, you'd be told in very clear terms.
Right.
And if it was good, you'll get the pat on the back. So that also put you on your guards. You had no idea whether you were being recorded. So there was monitoring that went along with your performance, and you were reminded at every turn that you were doing a very important job. It might make you popular, might give you a flair in society. That's nothing to do with the broadcasting house. It was just a job, at which you had to perform.
It was a serious business.
It was serious business.
Oh, that's great.
Serious business.
That's great. Now, in case you are just joining us again, this program is reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, and it is Reflections. We'll now take a break. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. Well, thank you for being there. Let's shift gear a little and give some other part of what we told, what we promised our viewers about you, that's advertising, and see how that one, goes through to your life, and then you find yourself the brain of advertising. I was going through something, say, arts guru. So, when did you leave broadcasting per se to join advertising, or were you doing advertising alongside journalism? What really happened? How did it happen?
It again some form of transition. I was lucky with broadcasting. The strides I made in broadcasting, many people would not believe I was in full-time broadcasting for just about 5 years.
Just 5?
Yes. Even though after I left, I was still required to do some regular programs for maybe another 3 years.
So the greater part of your years in this profession was advertising?
Yes, yes.
Because you were there for over 3.5 decades or thereabout.
I was in advertising for full-time for over 25, 30 years.
Okay.
I also, as happened to me in broadcasting, I also had forerunners, forebears, who made the transition from broadcasting to advertising. The advertising scene was almost deliberately poaching and recruiting from broadcasting.
Okay.
And maybe I benefited from the attention that advertising gave to broadcasters at that point. Largely, I think the emphasis at that point was the person, how they considered. The thing about broadcasting is you're always on display.
Yeah.
There was, can't remember his name now, the famous CBS newsreader in America. At some point, he had more credibility than the president of the country. You're on display every time, and people think a lot about you if you're doing your work well. They probably think you're better than anything. At the same time, if you do your work badly, you're on display, they probably think he can't even feed himself. You're disqualified outright. Maybe that has something to do with it.
All right.
It helped to bring people from broadcasting to serve as the face for to face their clients.
Right.
Intelligent people, which were recruited. It was a completely different industry. Make no mistake about it.
Right.
It wasn't one of those things in which you transferred skills easily.
Well, the PR part of it is what enhances the transitions from Adetiba.
Yes, yes and no. One thing which I think was common to broadcasting and advertising is the old saying, the show must continue.
Right.
Whatever you do, don't drop the ball.
Okay.
And I had situations in my time on radio in which I was ill, but I had to go on. But that's another story.
All right.
So that is common
Okay.
to both advertising and radio and broadcasting. But it's a completely different skill set. You almost came in and learned. I remember the first few meetings I attended in advertising. I almost didn't understand the language they were speaking.
I see.
Yes, and it was English.
Yeah.
The outdoor. They talk about 40 sheets.
Right.
I'm wondering what's this.
Sheets.
But those were sizes of boards.
Okay.
16 sheets, 40 sheets. Those are things you have to learn.
Right.
Picked up on production, 16 millimeter films, 35 millimeter films, and things. It's a different ball game completely.
Right.
What they had in common is, as I said, the show must go on,
Yeah.
and they're both communication.
Yeah.
They're both communication. The advertising side of things majored on the art of communication. In other words, the content of communication, you want to be able to deliver your message in 60 seconds, 30 seconds. In broadcasting, you had maybe an hour.
Yeah, you have a latitude on that.
To develop whatever you're trying to communicate. So to that extent, it's a bit different, but it's all about communication and the content of communication.
Right, let's look at today's advertising and then see what is there in it. Now, most especially since democracy has been around and politics has been part of human life, advertising has played very important role in this. And when you look at even the American democracy, much more money is being spent on adverts than any other thing as the campaigns continue. Now, do you see any, can you really, drive any ideological, ideological campaign? Can there be any ideological campaign without calumny?
Yes. The answer is yes. There can be. But people broadcast the negatives because it works.
Works.
It works.
Right.
That's why people do it. I could spend my time telling you about how many bridges I intend to build, my ideological position, and all that, which is helpful.
Okay. And it's positive?
Beg your pardon?
And it's positive too?
And it's positive.
Yeah.
But fear sells.
Okay.
If I spend my time talking to you about what I will do, you might be impressed or not. It depends on the perspective and your perception of what it's about. But if I'm saying that other fellow, if he ever gets into position, I pity you. The entire place will be overrun by disease. Boko Haram will be at your door in 2 seconds. It gets your attention. And because it gets attention, it's used around the world.
Okay.
Fear of the opponent.
Yeah.
How bad it could be, how difficult it could be, how nasty the environment would be if he ever gets into position. If it doesn't work, people won't do it. But it's been established a very long time ago that one of the things that people pay attention to in life, in general, is fear.
I'm asking this question because when we draw a corollary between this and the news, good news is no news, right? So bad news is why the news is. And could that be the situation there as you're explaining this?
Well, to some extent, good news is, we have a proverb in Yoruba which translates roughly into the fact that if a man has sores, open sores on his leg and is besieged by flies, you probably look at it, have a chuckle and move on.
Right.
But if the man, out of frustration, catches about 5 of them and throws them in his mouth, everybody will hang around. Yeah, so to that extent, bad news always gets attention. We are all vulnerable to communication. Whether you like it or not, certain things get to you if I say it in a way that is credible to you. And particularly if I repeat it long enough. You can tell as many lies as you want.
Okay.
People may try it, but if it's not true, they'll move away.
Okay.
And that happens to also human beings. If I can promote you as much as I like, people will try it, but after the trial, if it's negative, then they move away. So it works because it draws people to a particular event or person.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you vilify somebody long enough with heavy media spill, it will also take him a very long time to rid himself of that kind of image.
Okay.
If he doesn't do it immediately while it's going on.
Let's now look at today's world. In your own days, there were billboards, there were some other, materials, as you said, when you entered the advertising, industry, you found some strange, language being used and words, sheets and things like that. Today is all about internet, and the world has turned out to be like a global village, I must say, because everybody is now coming closer and together. How do you see the future for advertising in this regard, given the challenge being posed by the internet and then the online broadcasters and advertisers?
Advertising has changed dramatically. Two main components of advertising: creating the material, the content, and disseminating the material over the media.
Right.
The creating of the material hasn't changed too much.
Right.
Except you now have better tools to be able to do that. But in terms of dissemination, the importance of regular media has been diminished tremendously. How much of your budget now goes on television, conventional TV stations, conventional radio stations, conventional newspapers and things, has shifted tremendously. There's a lot now on blogs, on internet, on social media, and all that. Because at the end of the day, what people are trying to do is catch consumers where they are.
Yeah.
In the old days, you used media depending on who you're trying to reach. For instance, we knew that you had a better chance of reaching the North in those days through radio, more than the South. The average Northerner believed in the radio, even if he was in his farm. He had his radio
by his side.
Yes, probably listening to after service of BBC or whatever. It was a companion.
Yeah.
We also knew that cinema was very popular up north in those days. It was a cultural thing. It didn't matter what the film was. It wasn't important what the content was.
No, not really.
It was an outing, and they liked it. At that time, cinema was dying down in the South because of violence. People were afraid to go out at night. So the emphasis you put on cinema was beginning to go down, whereas in the North it was different.
Very enough, yeah.
So you did all of those calculations in how you placed your material to be able to reach your audience, whoever the audience is supposed to be.
Right.
That has shifted now because of online reception from many people. They prefer to consume their even news online.
Everything now, almost everything.
Yes. Sometimes what comes online is totally fabricated. But it gets through, and people consume that and believe it. And the conventional media have a very difficult time trying to catch up. And not everybody is of the opinion to listen to the conventional media before I believe. People pick up on this.
Okay, now, what in your opinion should conventional media do in order to face this challenge or surmount it? It's a big challenge, really.
One of the things we learned in advertising is it's easier to operate with a belief and perception of people than to try to change people's minds.
In my own search for you, in other sources and other platforms, I found very little indeed about you, so much, but I found so much more.
I don't leave too much footprint.
But you can't hide anyway. A goldfish has no hiding place. But I find so much and so many about your daughter, Kemi. She more or less, if you permit me to use the word, overshadow you somehow, given the fact that she's now all over the places. Even the hits on the net.
Right.
The moment you put Adetiba, the first thing that comes up is Kemi. Then maybe there about down the line you find Dele and
somewhere.
somewhere. And this one lady that has taken after you in this profession. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm absolutely delighted that she has that creative bent to her. Even though we pressured her to have conventional, what you might call conventional profession. She read law, but she was always interested in the creative arts.
Yeah.
And she's made quite an impact. I'm quite happy to be overshadowed.
Okay.
You know? I mean,
You're happy to be overshadowed?
Oh yeah. I've had my time. I'm happy for her. She's chosen a line of business which I'm familiar with. I didn't do full-time movie making, which is what she's majoring in now. She had done on-camera things in the past, presented programs on TV and things, but making movies is what she's about now.
Okay.
And we're able to discuss, and I can advise, because I have a grounding from my advertising days about content, about filming, editing, and all that. I edited for 30 seconds commercials, 60 seconds commercials. She edited for 3 hours of a movie. So it's a different ballgame completely.
Entirely.
Yes.
Entirely.
But the principle is similar. We were able to chat and discuss, and some of the issues she has, I can talk her through it and things.
Oh, okay. That's great and that's interesting. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
We cannot end this interview without asking you this last question, and that is, what do you want to be remembered for?
What I want to be remembered for? That is, I hadn't spent too much time thinking about that. I tell you, one thing which has always been important to me, whether I'll be remembered for it, I don't know, is human relationship. For me, it's my litmus test. If I had any impact as I came from one step to another.
Right.
I love the situation whereby I can meet people I've met in broadcasting, in advertising, in my social life, in the club, years after, and they're glad to come up to me and say, "Do you remember me? I was X and Y. You employed me for this thing. You interviewed Muhammad Ali," and whatever it was. I regard that as more memorable than anything else.
Okay.
We would do different things for a living, but you can't escape working with people.
Oh, that's great. Just like the opportunity I have and the privilege of having to meet you and talk to you.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure, really. And we thank you so very much for the time you've given us in order to talk to you and then get this little information from you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
A very big thank you to you out there for having come along. I've been talking with Dele Adetiba. I'll just sum it up as I saw it and put it to you as I saw it too. a veteran journalist, and arts guru. We've had a lengthy discussion, and of course, it's been too much for me, and I think you can accommodate that. It was Reflections. We thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, take responsibility. Coronavirus is real. We'll come your way next time with another personality. Until then, bye-bye.